Hello and welcome to our 7-8 minutes of weekly Torah talk. Our guest today is Rabbi Rachel Timoner of Congregation Bet Elohim in Brooklyn, and our parsha is Beshalach. Hello, Rabbi. Thank you for being with us.
Hello, Shmuel. Thank you so much for having me.
So in Beshalach, soon after allowing the children of Israel to depart from Egypt, Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, chases after them to force their return. The sea splits to allow the Israelites to pass through and then closes over the pursuing Egyptians. The people of Israel sing a song of gratitude to God. In the desert, the people suffer thirst and hunger and repeatedly complain to Moses. God then sweetens the bitter waters of Marah, and later has Moses bring forth water from a rock. He causes manna to rain down from the heavens before dawn each morning, and quails to appear in the Israelite camp in each evening. The people are instructed to gather a double portion of manna on Friday for Shabbat. Those who try to gather manna on Shabbat find nothing. In Rephidim, the people are attacked by the Amalekites, who are defeated by Moses' prayers and an army raised by Joshua. The first pasuk of the parsha says, ויהי בשלח פרעה את העם, ולא ניחם אלוהים דרך ארץ פלישתים כי קרוב הוא, כי אמר אלוהים פן ינחם העם בראותה מלחמה ושבו מצרימה. It came to pass, when Pharaoh let the people go, that God did not let them by way of the land of the Philistines, for it was near, because God said, lest the people reconsider when they see war and return to Egypt. So Rabbi, God has some concern about the people, that they are afraid of war. It's an interesting parsha. It begins with the fear of war and it ends with an actual war against the Amalekites. What happens in between?
So, such a good question, because it's true that the people are so fearful and have been enslaved for so many generations. How are they going to be equipped to fight a war? What needs to happen to them to make them a people who can defend themselves? So we find in verse 14:10 this moment when the people are standing right at the edge of the sea, between the sea and the approaching army. And this moment of crisis is a moment of truth in which they're going to find out who they are. And I want to point out that we, in this story, we are refugees. We're leaving tyranny. We're fleeing for our lives. We're in great danger. We're hoping someday to arrive in a place where we can feel safe, where we can have the promised land of safety, and also where we can have a city of refuge, where we can be safe and live free of fear. But so here we are in this moment, not yet there, having fled, and according to the Talmud, the people at that point split into 4 groups. One group wants to throw themselves into the sea. This is in the Jerusalem Talmud and Tani. One group wants to throw themselves into the sea. They have so much despair, so little hope, they're going to drown themselves. One group says, let's just give ourselves over as slaves. Let's go back to slavery. Both of those groups have given up. But 2 groups have not given up. One of the other groups says, let's fight. We have arms. Let's fight. And the 4th group says, let's cry out to God.
And
let's pray, let's cry out from our hearts.
That's the only group that the Torah actually refers to, because the pasuk says the Israelites looked up and there were the Egyptians marching after them. They were terrified and cried out. So that's the first group you're talking about.
Exactly. So what happened between there being 4 groups to there being a unified group that cries out? So in the verse it says Pharaoh hikriv, and it's translated often as Pharaoh drew near, got closer.
Right.
But actually, hikriv isn't he feel, right? So it's caused drawing near, caused someone or something to draw near. And so one way we could see that is that this divided camp that were in 4 groups wanting to do different things, as Pharaoh gets closer, as the danger gets more real, they unify. Pharaoh draws them near to one another and become one voice, drawing near to God and crying out in that one voice. And I studied this with Melila Helner Eshed, who's a scholar at Hebrew University in Kabbalah. And she brought a text from the Zohar that said that the cry was so strong and so sharp that it pierced through the layers of heaven, reaching not just Adonai, but the Zohar says that the cry went all the way to the holy ancient one, Atika, which is the the Zoharic idea of kind of a primordial face of God, the only face of God, the Zohar says, that has the power to split the sea. And so when later Adonai says, why are you crying out to me? The Zohar reads that as Adonai saying, I'm not the one you need. You need Atika. You need the Holy Ancient One who has this power. Isn't that interesting?
It is. It is
But
interesting. But you know, we know that people do unify amid such danger, right? It's not
yes,
surprising that the four groups become one when the danger becomes more real.
that's right. They come together and they realize they need each other. They need each other, and they realize that they can turn to God also, that they're not alone, and they can cry out for help. And I find that when we are in fear and danger as a group, and we're able to unify like that, the crying out is the first step of becoming free. In fact, Levi Yitzhak Berdichev says of this cry, this was the beginning of their liberation, their ability to cry out together. And then, of course, the response is tell the people to go forward, and they begin to walk into the sea. And the last thing I want to bring is this midrash from Shemot Rabbah, in which it describes the Israelites walking through the sea, and I'll read it to you. Rabbi Nahora said in a discourse, an Israelite woman crossing through the sea held her child in her hand crying. She stretched out her hand and plucked an apple or a pomegranate from the sea and gave it to her child. For it says, and he led them through the depths as through a wilderness. So here we have this idea that even as they're crossing the sea, even as they're making the march toward freedom, even as they're in the midst of the struggle for their liberation, there's an orchard available. There's beautiful fresh fruit to eat. The crying baby has food to sustain him or her. And so when we are struggling, when we are reaching for freedom, when we are working together and crying out and striving, let's not forget the simple beauty, the miracles, the splendor that we have in our world that God provides for us, the delicious fruit to eat, the wonders that are there for us every day, even while we're in the midst of our struggle.
And this process of growing up and trying to find beauty, even in the hardest of times, it continues as the people keep going through the desert?
Definitely. And going back to your first question about not being led through the short path, but being led through the roundabout by way of the wilderness.
We begin with the fear of war, and then we end the parsha with the war against the Amalekites. So
yes, and it's related to your question about growing up. That there's a way that we, as slaves, never had the ability to kind of plant our feet and say, this is who we are, and we're going to defend ourselves. Never had the ability to take responsibility in that way because we were under an oppressive regime. But once free, once birthed through the sea, we are in this development process of learning how to stand up for ourselves, learning how to see and appreciate the wonders of the world, learning how to become in relationship with the Holy Blessed One, who is the source of all of those blessings. It's a growing and maturation process that takes the entire period in the Midbar for us to be able to reach the point where we really have the maturity to have our promised land and to be able to live in a way that's in some balance with all that is.
Rabbi, thank you so much, and Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you. Shabbat Shalom.